Hey, everybody, and welcome back to For the Booze.
Boo.
For the Booze.
And we're back. Sorry,
We are.
had to take a week off. Megan got the stomach flu.
Yeah.
And then I was planning on recording something in the middle of the week, but your family came from out of town.
Yes, they did. And I did not have a fun time with the stomach flu, so that was terrible.
I didn't have a fun time with you having the stomach flu either.
Yeah.
It was gross.
It was really bad. I don't know how anybody else did not get it, but
It was
thank the Lord.
pretty amazing.
Because, it was pretty rough.
But we are back.
We are back.
Oh.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just saying,
Go ahead,
we're back.
co-host. We are
I am
back.
the co-host.
We are back. Well, technically, I am too. That's what a co-host is. We co-host. We are back. I promise you guys, we weren't just like flaking out like the end of last year. We weren't sure what was going on.
Yeah.
Megan was really sick. We do have the second part of the New Orleans and
To Nowlands.
yeah, Marie Laveau and all that.
Yes.
We are going to bring it to you. We're going to do this more of an old school podcast. This is going to be more of a learning segment.
Ooh.
It does have spooky stuff, so don't click off of the podcast just yet. There are stories and stuff in here.
There will always be paranormal in our shows.
Because it's for the booze.
Yeah.
It's a paranormal show.
Boo.
We need to get a new mouse pad.
Yes.
You know, because we just made this. We can have two.
If anyone hasn't noticed,
How would they notice?
no. Like, we changed our picture.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We changed the logo. We wanted to go with something a little more,
Us.
well, I think in a little more polished,
Yeah.
you know, because there's nothing wrong with our old logo.
There isn't.
But it was made in PixArt.
Yeah.
I really didn't know what I was doing at the time, so we made something better.
So if you haven't seen it, go check it out. Any of our socials or
Yeah.
Spotify or,
Or kick the table.
I did. Or anywhere else.
And I want to throw this out there before we start the show. Our Patreon is up.
Yes.
So
Patreon.
that's right. So if you are interested in supporting the show, that's probably going to be your best way to do it. So go check it out.
That is.
3 tiers. You can officially be an official Booze Crew member. Part of the show, if you will.
You absolutely can. And we will work on getting some content up on there, some extra little tidbits.
I swear we are going to have videos at some point. I just can't. I'm just struggling with it. I don't know what's wrong with me.
It's okay.
But we will get them.
We've never used video editing software.
No.
And it's a little more than a mixing board and things like that we use for the show. So don't be too hard on yourself there, babe.
I'm doing my best. But let's get into this. Now, the first half of this, I mean, we already said what it is, so we don't get to do the cool spooky effect, but this is part 2.
Yes.
And we're going to get into the history of New Orleans and all that jazz, if you will.
Ooh, New Orleans jazz. Get it? Mm-hmm.
In 1788, the city of New Orleans suffered a number of significant setbacks, including the first 2 great fires and an epidemic that taxed the already full cemetery located on St. Peter Street, bounded by St. Peter, Burgundy, Toulouse, I believe it is, and Rampart Street. Now, in response to concerns from physicians about the spread of diseases, the acting government of the city ordered the earlier cemetery to be closed and a new cemetery to be established further away from the population.
Ooh.
So that cemetery that we know is not the St. Louis Cemetery. All numbers of it, because I think it's like 1, 2, and 3, was not the original cemetery.
That is interesting.
And the people that are there were plucked out of the ground and brought there.
Moved. Yeah. That's really sad.
It's sad and kind of gross.
Yeah.
Could you imagine
Anytime they do like excavating and, exhuming and things
digging
like
up
that,
liquid bodies?
I think it's a little disrespectful, if I'm being
I
honest.
mean, it is, but sometimes, as we're
It's
going to find out,
necessary.
it is a necessity.
Yeah, and I get it. And that's fine. And for like crime and, evidence purposes and things like that, I do get it.
That's more
However,
modern. That's more modern day. This wasn't really for stuff like that.
I get it. It's the same concept.
This
though,
was purely based on the fact that New Orleans is so below sea level,
right?
That bodies were washing up from the ground, and it's a major health concern.
Yeah.
The church selected a 300 square foot parcel bordering marshy swampland outside of the confines of the fortified city, and about 40 yards from the rear garden of the then location of Charity Hospital as the site for the new cemetery. Now, a picket fence was erected around its perimeter, and burials began immediately. The cemetery was initially constructed as a temporary burial site, but was soon after approved as permanent by the Spanish royal decree on August 14, 1789. This has been around a while.
Yeah.
Now, it can be assumed that during the 18th century, interment, I think that's how you say that word. I'm honestly...
Internment?
Interment.
Interment. Oh, there's
Within
not
the,
an in.
So it's like when they put a body in the cemetery is
Okay.
basically what that means. Like,
Okay.
it's just a fancy word. Interment within the new cemetery, now known as St. Louis Cemetery No.1. It took the form of in-ground burials following the convention established in St. Peter Street Cemetery. Now, in 1803, a city ordinance was issued mandating that all forms of interment occur above ground in an effort to deal with the low-lying landscape of the cemetery and the constant threat of flooding. Now, though the mandate was not strictly followed, it did prompt the style of interment that we are most familiar with today in New Orleans, above-ground tombs, an aesthetic tradition of memorial architecture that we inherited from France and Spain, with the added benefit of it solving the issues associated with a very high water table. So flooding in Louisiana has always been an issue.
Yeah.
Always. And when you get dead bodies floating out of the ground because of it,
You got to think outside the box.
people get sick.
Yeah.
Now, through heavy use throughout its early years, the cemetery expanded from the confines of its original footprint, eventually reaching directly up to the ramparts of the fortified city and covering about 1/3 of the block bordered today by Conti, Basin, Bienville, and Treme streets. I'm not French. I'm not going to be able to pronounce some of these words. You just bear with me. I've never been there. I don't know. Maybe I'm saying them right.
I know. Maybe. I took 2 years of French in high school, and I
You
don't
are
remember
French.
a single word.
Your family is French.
Yes.
You're bad French.
Yeah.
Bad French.
I'm aware.
Oui, pee, pee. Sorry, French listeners. It's because I'm a dumb American. Now, following the Louisiana Purchase in 1803 and the Haitian Revolution of 1791 to 1804, the demographics of New Orleans' population shifted dramatically. Americans from northern states flooded the city and brought I knew I was going to mess this word up. Protestantism, there you go, with them. And thousands of refugees from Haiti arrived with a mixture of Catholic, Caribbean, and West African-based religious beliefs. And this is where
that's a mix.
This is where we start seeing the Catholicism and voodoo getting mixed up. And
right.
the cemetery was enlarged to accommodate this influx, with an additional parcel of land added at the rear of the original footprint for uses for the Protestant burial ground, and adjacent to it, a space allotted for burials of African Americans and people of color, because God forbid that dead people who don't look like each other be buried together. The racism in this country is incredible.
Awful.
It's mind-blowing.
Yeah.
Now, in 1805, the city granted the newly established Episcopal Congregation of Christ Church ownership of the Protestant burial ground, which they managed from that point until 1822, when the city offered their growing congregation a tract of land on Faubourg Street at the head of Girard Street for the building of a new Protestant cemetery, which would later be known as the Girard Street Cemetery. In June of 1832, the New Orleans City Council set upon a plan to extend Conti, Treme, and Basin streets in a way to cross the land occupied by St. Louis Cemetery No.1. Now, the church wardens and city surveyor Joseph Pile, P-I-L-I-E, supervised the work to transfer the burials within the way of the extensions to within the smaller planned footprint of the cemetery, and the current main entrance gate dates to this road project. So that gate's been up for
A really, really, really long time.
almost 200 years.
Wow.
Almost 200 years.
That is crazy.
That's an old gate.
Yeah.
Now, in the years that followed, Treme Street was laid out, bisecting the Protestant parcel and separating it, and the space set aside for the burials of African Americans and people of color from the rest of the cemetery, because God forbid they even be buried anywhere even close to them.
Boo.
Disgusting. Now, by 1838, the majority of the remains in the Protestant section had been relocated to the Girard Street Cemetery, and in 1840, that was left on the what was left of the section on the west side of Treme Street was sold as building lots. Today, only a small strip of the Protestant section remains bordering Treme and Conti streets and is now under the care of the New Orleans Catholic cemeteries. In 1847, the Board of Church Wardens of St. Louis Cathedral agreed to relinquish a portion of the cemetery bordering St. Louis Street to the first municipality of the city of New Orleans so that improvements could be made in the area. Now, between 1847 and 1852, the remains of those interred within the portion of the cemetery were relocated to newly built vaults on Basin and Conti streets, as well as to provide family tombs. The way they decided to put the bodies in here is a trip. Because I never knew all of... I knew what it looked like. Mm-hmm. I knew what was going on. But as the story kind of unfolds, you're going to find out that they were putting bodies in there by a much greater number than you would maybe think.
Aw, no.
Now, in 1975, St. Louis Cemetery No.1 was listed on the National Register of Historic Places as having a national level of significance in the areas of art and architecture. It was later listed as part of the African American Heritage Trail by the state of Louisiana in 2008, due to the large number of historically and culturally significant African Americans interred within the cemetery. New Orleans Catholic Cemeteries is currently working on securing that significance through their Abandoned Tomb initiative, in which they restore tombs in accordance with the Secretary of the Interior's Interior Standards for Historic Preservation projects as outlined by the National Park Service. So, I mean, they're trying to preserve the history of the cemetery to the best of their ability. Especially when it came to African Americans. We talked about this on the last episode that we did. The record keeping was very bad. Mm-hmm. They really did treat them less than human. And it's sad because there were a lot of very historically prominent, figures in the African American culture. And it's, we're never going to really know all of them because of this, treatment.
Absolutely.
And it's
awful.
It sucks.
It does.
Now, the initiative is funded through tourism revenue and support for individual and corporate donors. To learn more about the initiative and how to donate to this important cause, you guys can all go to the Abandoned Tomb Initiative if it sounds like something you'd be into. Now, former New Orleanian William Faulkner famously wrote, quote, "The past isn't dead and buried. It's not even past," unquote. Nowhere is the truth more evident than in St. Louis Cemetery No.1. In this storied, quote, city of the dead, elaborate, crumbling above-ground graves hint at the stories of the larger-than-life personalities entombed within. As is true for many places in New Orleans, the veil between past and present feels pretty thin there. It's no wonder St. Louis Cemetery attracts more than 100,000 visitors each year.
Wow.
Now, some come to see the final resting place for voodoo queen Marie Laveau, while others come to tend to graves of loved ones buried within, as St. Louis Cemetery remains an active graveyard. Still, others come to experience the city's living history via a stroll through its oldest cemetery. St. Louis Cemetery was built in 1789. Now, regardless of your motivation, a trip to New Orleans wouldn't be complete without visiting the St. Louis Cemetery No.1.
I absolutely would if we ever went there.
I would love to see it.
What? The thing is crazy. It's amazing looking.
It's honestly like morbidly beautiful.
Absolutely. That is a great way to put that.
I mean, the structures in there are just, they're like ornate, but they're, it's like the somber place with a lot of beauty. It's very strange. Now, above-ground burials are just one of New Orleans' idiosyncrasies, but they don't exist solely for the sake of uniqueness. Now, the city's high water table makes in-ground burials pretty much impossible. A coffin buried underground simply floats back up to the top.
Ugh.
And then you surf it the hell out of town.
Don't do that.
Now, one located at the marshy city limit, St. Louis Cemetery is now near the center of the city, thanks to the draining of the swamps, which permitted people to settle beyond the French Quarter. One of the first things you'll see when you enter St. Louis Cemetery No.1 is a bank of, quote, open vaults or, quote, wall vaults to your left. You'll see these tombs stacked, grave sites, filing cabinet style, one above the other, and glance at the ground and you'll see some graves are only partially visible.
Wow.
Now, the rest are below the earth, evidence that New Orleans is gradually sinking. Many oven vaults, I guess they're called, house the remains of countless family members. Now, after a body is interred, it is left undisturbed in the grave for a period of just 1 year and 1 day. At that point, the remains may be pushed to the back of the tomb, leaving room for another body to be interred.
Stop it.
Now, other families prefer to collect the remains, placing them in a muslin bag. Do you know what that is?
No idea.
I had to look this up.
Okay.
It's basically, it's like an organic bag.
Okay.
But I don't understand. I hope that they're like in something when you put them in this bag, because there is nothing to stop anything from rotting through one of these organic bags. So,
oh, good.
I don't really understand the logistics behind it, but I did have to look it up because I had no idea what a muslin bag was.
So much of this is why I want to be cremated.
Yeah, I want to be pushed out to sea and lit on fire on a boat.
I know you do.
Yeah.
And I will draw that bow, baby.
I hope so. Now, if you wish to be buried in this famous graveyard, you can make it happen, but it's going to cost you. It's not unreasonable, though, when you consider the people who will become your neighbors for eternity, but they're not. Well, I guess, I mean, if you're pushed to the back, I don't know. I feel like that's a problematic thing. Now, notable New Orleanians buried in St. Louis No.1 include Etienne de Boré, a wealthy pioneer of the sugar industry and the first mayor of New Orleans. Homer Plessy, the plaintiff from the landmark 1896 Plessy versus Ferguson Supreme Court decision on civil rights. In June 1892, Homer Plessy challenged segregation laws when he refused to disembark from a, quote, whites-only train car at nearby Press Street. Plessy was convicted of breaking the law, and the case moved to the Supreme Court. In 1896, the, quote, separate but equal mandate was ruled constitutional, setting the stage for years of segregation and oppression. But the seeds of the civil rights movement also had been planted thanks to Homer Plessy.
Hey.
Homer. I mean, that's a big deal.
That's a huge deal. Are you kidding me?
I don't know why
Wow.
why he's not talked about more coming up in high school.
Right.
You know, maybe that's a college subject, but I've never heard of him.
Me either.
You know, so thanks
And,
again,
like-
Florida educational system, for failing me.
Yeah. Pretty much.
Failing me.
I wonder, like, is there a more, I don't know, in-depth version in other states? Is there, like, is it a college thing? Because,
I
like,
don't
we
know.
definitely learned about this kind of stuff in high school.
Well, we're going to get to find out because our kids go to
Yeah.
school in a different state.
That's
So
crazy.
we're going to see what they learn. Now, Ernest and, quote, Dutch Moriel, the first African-American mayor of New Orleans, was entered there in 1989. Subsequently, Morial's family built a new family tomb at St. Louis Cemetery No.3, and Morial's body was re-entered there in late 2014.
Wow.
Now, notable Creole author and educator Alexander Dimitri is buried at St. Louis Cemetery No.1. Most of the Dimitri family is entered there, including Andrea, I'm not sure, Dimitri, and his wife, Marianne Celeste Dragon. Now, Marianne Celeste Dragon was the subject of a famous portrait painted by Jose Salazar. Now,
What a sweet name, by the way.
the Dragon Lady.
Wow.
Now you have that title.
Marianne Celeste Dragon.
Yeah, I know. It's actually pretty cool.
That's a pretty sweet name. I would have just gone by, like, Celeste Dragon.
Just Dragon. You call me Dragon. Now, as we all know, the renowned voodoo priestess Marie Laveau is believed to be interred in the Glapion family crypt. Other notable New Orleanians here include Bernard de Marigny. Now, the French Creole aristocrat and politician who founded both the Faubourg Marigny and Mandeville, Louisiana. Barthélemy Lafon, the architect and surveyor who allegedly became one of Jean Lafitte's pirates. And Paul Morphy, one of the earliest world champions of chess. I have a really hard time saying these names.
They're a lot.
these names are...
They are a lot.
They're really... If you say them right, they sound great and they roll off the tongue.
Yeah.
But
just reading them off a piece of paper with no context whatsoever.
Well, and I grew up in the South, and this, like, I could be like, Falberg Marigny and Mandeville. You know, like, that feels right to me, but I don't know.
It does.
Jean Lafitte's, whatever.
Lafayette?
It's not even Lafayette, though.
I know.
Now, Delphine LaLaurie, the notoriously cruel slave owner, is also believed to lie and rest here. Architect and engineer Benjamin Latrobe was buried at St. Louis No.1 after dying from yellow fever in 1820 while doing engineering for the New Orleans waterworks. Oof. Now, oddly, in 2010, actor Nicolas Cage purchased a pyramid-shaped tomb to be his future final resting place. But wait, he's not dead yet, you might point out. And you're right, Nicolas Cage is only 60 years old and seems to be in pretty good health. However, he's thinking about the future, which is one explanation for why he purchased a gleaming white, 9-foot pyramid inscribed with the Latin phrase, Omnia ab uno, meaning all for one. Now, the gravesite has baffled news outlets worldwide, whose reporters have come up with many different conspiracy theories among them. Cage is a closet voodoo practitioner. Cage has Illuminati ties. Cage is an immortal who will entomb himself for a century before reemerging, and even Cage has stored his wealth in the tomb.
Okay.
Now, nobody really knows why he chose a tomb that's so incongruous with its surroundings, but we do know it's a very eye-catching construction, and that Cage evidently loves New Orleans, which is true because I may be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that at one point Nicolas Cage owned the LaLaurie Mansion, or he might even own it now.
What?
I can't remember, but I think that was actually Matthew McConaughey. I don't remember. Cage has something big to do with New Orleans. I should have looked it up. I did terrible research apparently, but he has very strong ties there, and apparently he wants to be buried there.
I mean, okay. Go for it.
I mean, yeah.
I mean, people pick out their plots and stuff when they're alive all the time. So why not?
You know what? He's rich enough where they're probably just going to not mess with his body.
Yeah.
It's just going to stay there. Now, the cemetery spans just one square block, but is the resting place of many thousands of New Orleanians. A Protestant section lies in the northwest section. Effective March 1st, 2015, the Roman Catholic Archdiocese of New Orleans, which owns and manages the cemetery, has closed it to the general public, ostensibly because of the rise in vandalism there.
Wow.
That's trash. Ugh. Now, however, in a controversial move, the diocese is now charging tour companies for access, $4,500 per year or lesser amounts for shorter periods. And families who own tombs can also apply for a pass to visit. You have to apply for a pass to visit your family members.
That's awful.
Now, but this isn't where the story of St. Louis Cemetery No.1 ends. This is actually where it's going to begin. While it has a lot of history and cultural importances, it's also home to some very eerie claims of paranormal activity. So, while we may be leaving the history in the past, it seems here in New Orleans, the past will be joining us. In spirit, that is.
Yay. That was very, very interesting.
There's a lot of, this is what I was saying, like there's a lot of very culturally important people here that a lot of people might not even be aware of. So
I want to know more. Just New Orleans in general is very intriguing to me, and then add in Marie Laveau and the voodoo and like just so many parts and pieces that make up New Orleans.
There are a lot of moving pieces that make up what we consider, New Orleans and Louisiana in general.
Right.
And a lot of it is stuff that none of us will ever understand. I think you have to be a native New Orleanian, or at least from the state, because I almost feel like Louisiana is its own thing.
It's like an island by itself.
It really is.
Yeah.
It's I've never really heard anybody say bad things about it, though. And you hear some super crazy claims about it. Mm-hmm. It's one of them places that, like, I where we lived wasn't even that far from there, but it's on my bucket list of places to visit. I have heard not the greatest things about like Bourbon Street and the French Quarter and how it stinks and everything, but it's the history. I'm not a drinker. We don't party. I just want to go experience the history of the city.
Absolutely.
Because there is tons of it, and the architecture and stuff is beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
So this is where we're going to have to take a break. But when we come back, we're going to get into all the spooky stuff. So, Advert Stephen, take us away.
And now, Booze Crew, back to the episode. While the name may be a bit confusing, St. Louis Cemetery is not located in Missouri. In fact, it's nestled in one of the most haunted cities in the country, New Orleans. St. Louis Cemetery is well known by locals and tourists alike as one of the most active haunted locations in the Big Easy, with reports of the one and only voodoo priestess Marie Laveau assaulting non-believers to a blue-eyed ghost looking for a specific grave.
A blue-eyed ghost. Are you there? Is this you?
Me?
So yeah, there's some weird ghost stories in this place.
Ugh. Just
the
blue-eyed
honestly,
ghost? That's it?
But when we hear about the blue-eyed ghost, it's kind of sad.
Yeah.
It's kind of sad how the blue-eyed ghost gets his origin story.
Oh.
So.
Well, St. Louis Cemetery No.1 is New Orleans' oldest gravesite, established by Spanish royal decree on August 14th, 1789. St. Louis Cemetery No.1 remains the oldest cemetery that locals and tourists alike can visit. It's also considered one of the most haunted cemeteries in all of the United States.
Yeah, it is.
In the span of just one block, this burial ground holds over 700 tombs and over 100,000 of the dead and counting, as it still is an active gravesite. Is it any surprise that it is rumored to be very haunted?
No, it's not.
It is
Well,
not.
because if you really listen close to my story, they are stacking dead bodies on top of each other.
I know. It's so sad.
Not exactly how I'd want to go. I'd probably haunt the hell out of your city, too.
Yeah,
I'm not
for
doing
sure.
that.
I'd be like, excuse me.
But, sheesh.
For over 200 years, there have been reports of people having run-ins with the ghosts, which call St. Louis Cemetery No.1 home. Many people have been tempted to try and access this haunted cemetery after dark, to try and make contact with the ghosts which haunt St. Louis Cemetery after dark. We can't say we recommend this method of venturing to see the ghosts, although St. Louis Cemetery No.1's eerie facade is spookily inviting.
The gates make me want to go in.
I know, right? The whole place, really.
It is amazing.
Even the appearance of the cemetery bolsters the illusion of days gone by, to say nothing of the eerily quiet atmosphere that descends over the St. Louis No.1 as dusk falls and night begins its reign. Its age is prominently displayed by the character of the cemetery, broken shells and cobblestones dredged from Lake
Pontchartrain.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Pontchartrain and the Mississippi River form the alleys, and the crumbling, chipped above-ground crypts hold the dead. The disorderly layout of the tombs and burial plots are a labyrinth that only ghosts of the cemetery are able to navigate. Many of the family's tombs bear cryptic symbols, as well as signs of vandalism and old age. It is no wonder that many people feel a ghostly presence while visiting New Orleans' oldest cemetery. And it's no wonder that many movie productions practically ache to film within the cemetery's white walls. Although Easy Rider and Interview with a Vampire are perhaps the most famous films shot inside by far.
Now, I'm going to blow everybody's mind that listens to podcasts because...
Oh my God, are you going to say it? Oh my God, you're going to say
you've
it.
never seen Interview with a Vampire. But from what I had read, I believe Easy Rider was... They didn't ask for permission.
Really?
Yeah, they just filmed there.
No way.
We should watch Interview with a Vampire. It's a really good movie, and you're super into vampires.
I know, I am. I really like them.
Yeah. Yeah, too much. Not in like a weird way where she's like... I don't know. Are you fantasizing? Mom?
No.
But I mean, you read a lot of weird books.
I do.
But, yeah, a lot of people have wanted to film there. They've turned a lot of people away. But from what I believe I saw was that Easy Rider did it without permission.
They were just like, all right, we're doing it. Let's go.
I'm sure they had to pay.
That's
They ended up
crazy.
having to pay. But,
no way.
Yeah.
A crumbling appearance, dusted with age, St. Louis Cemetery No.1 earned the nickname The Cities of the Dead by the famed author Mark Twain.
Before you go on, can I just say, Mark Twain makes an appearance in so many of our episodes.
Like, so incredibly many.
Yeah.
Like, we can't even express to you, if you go back and listen to 100 now plus episodes, Mark Twain has been in at least 2 handfuls, if not more.
He's probably been in at least a dozen.
It's so crazy.
I mean, Mark Twain, if it was your goal to become famous, congratulations wherever you are.
Bravo, sir.
Samuel Clemens.
A more appropriate name has never been given. But which ghosts still call St. Louis No.1 home? And which ghosts are still making their presence known today? Renowned for its historical significance and eerie mystique, St. Louis Cemetery No.1 has made appearances in various television programs and documentaries dedicated to uncovering the world of the supernatural. It notably took center stage in the gripping series Spectral Chronicles, Unveiling Haunted History, where investigators delved deep into the cemetery's ghostly narratives and spine-tingling encounters. In the realm of literature, St. Louis Cemetery No.1 has left its mark in works such as St. Louis Cemetery No.1 by Michael Farute, I gotta guess that's how you say that, and Haunted New Orleans by Troy Taylor.
Yeah, I believe it's Michael Farute.
Farute?
Yeah.
These literary creations delve into the cemetery's spectral past, presenting captivating accounts of the enigmatic and supernatural. Today, the cemetery stands as an essential destination for history enthusiasts and those intrigued by the paranormal. Its captivating presence in popular culture and the media weaves an aura of mystery and the otherworldly, beckoning all who seek an immersive encounter in its mesmerizing and spectral ambiance.
Now, I'm not such a big fan of history, but I would love to go there.
You're not a fan of history?
No, not at all.
Get it.
No, but really, it is. It's like a dream destination for people who are into history.
How could it not be?
It's a bigger part of American history than people realize.
Absolutely. It doesn't get the credit that it deserves, for sure.
For sure.
St. Louis Cemetery No.1's most infamous ghost and grave is that of the esteemed voodoo queen of New Orleans. During her lifetime, Marie Laveau dominated fortune-telling, the occult, and herbal remedies. In addition to sightings in the cemetery, Marie Laveau's spirit is also said to still haunt her home on St. Anne Street in the French Quarter of the city. Her brightly colored clothing and red and white headdress are hard to miss, and she suddenly appears and then vanishes from plain sight. Reports of scratching, pinching, shoving, touching, sudden illness, and voices have all contributed to her not-so-friendly reputation. The practice of marking her tomb with 3 X's led to severe vandalism over the years. The Archdiocese of New Orleans has since refurbished her final resting place and restricted cemetery visitors to those on registered tours or those with families residing within.
So, yeah, you can't just walk in like you could once upon a time.
Right.
Now you need to either pay for a tour, which they have to shell out a lot of money. So I'm sure the tours have gone up in price.
Yeah.
Or what I don't like, I understand why they're doing it, but one thing I don't really care for here is that you have to, I don't know if they will just give you a pass or if you have to apply for a pass, but if you have a family member in there.
Right. Like you can't just go see them. It's crazy.
Yeah. And I don't think that's really right, because I would hate for one of my loved ones to be in a cemetery and I would have to seek out a permission slip to visit them.
Right.
There's something about me, it just doesn't sit right.
It doesn't
But
at all.
At the same time, like I said, I do understand why they're doing it, because it became such a location for people to go and vandalize, which I don't understand why people would do that. But I get it, but it does suck. I don't know how to rationalize it in my head, honestly.
The story of Henry Vignes is a tragically sad one. As a sailor during the 19th century, Henry Vignes had no true home to speak of. He was a nomad, traveling here and there, sailing on the high seas in New Orleans. He made his home at a local boarding house, but he was constantly worried about his important papers while away from the Crescent City. So much so that before departing on another voyage, he asked the owner of the boarding house to keep his papers if he died. These papers included his family tombs. The owner of the boarding house promised Henry that all would be well. Quote, "You have nothing to worry about," she exclaimed upon his departure. But all was not well. While Henry was at sea, the owner sold Henry's family tomb. He discovered her treachery when he returned to New Orleans.
What a bitch.
Dude, like,
what a bitch.
Who does that?
I know we don't like to cuss a lot on this show, but what a bitch.
Who does that? That is atrocious.
But this was a poor city at the time.
I don't care.
All right, so the way the city was worked out was like you had super rich and super poor.
No, absolutely not. There is never an excuse.
That is a tragic move, man.
His family's plots. Like, what?
And
Absolutely
his
not.
place to be buried.
Poor Henry Vignes, and that is very, very true. Yeah. Poor Henry was never able to rectify the problem, legally or on his own terms. Shortly after his return, he fell ill and died. But as his tomb had been sold, there was no money to build another. Henry's body was then buried in an unmarked grave in the paupers section of St. Louis Cemetery No.1. Although his body was laid to rest over a century ago, the ghost of Henry Vignes is still seen wandering the cemetery. He is described as being tall with blue eyes. So corporeal does it appear that visitors to the cemetery have actually spoken with Henry's ghost. Strolling up to tourists, the apparition asks if they know where the Vignes tomb is located, for he is having trouble finding it himself.
See, I told you the story of the blue-eyed ghost is kind of tragic.
That was really hard to read. That was so sad.
It's very sad.
What?
Because now not only did you get done wrong in life, and now they say your spirit's wandering the afterlife looking for your place to rest.
No.
And it's not even like
so wrong.
It's not even like a ghost story where they're like he's violent. No, he just wants to find his home.
He's like, "Hello, can you help me, please?"
So,
oh my gosh.
So it's pretty sad. And you know what, Henry, if you're out there, I hope you find it, man.
Man, I'm so sorry, Henry.
But if you're listening to Henry, Patreon for the booze.
Stop it. So allegedly, Henry's ghost has even turned up at funerals, appearing behind the grieving to ask if there might be any more room in the tomb for him. His apparition has been caught on camera, and so has the distinct sound of a male's voice on an EVP proclaiming, "I need to rest." For the ghost of Henry Vignes, it does not seem that rest has ever come easy or that it ever will.
Yeah, rest in peace, man.
The lost ghost of Alphonse roams the pathways of St. Louis Cemetery No.1 in search of a final resting place. He's been known to take guests' hands and pull them to a stop, smile wildly, and ask to bring him home. He also has a knack for gathering flowers off of freshly spruced up graves and placing them on his own forgotten tomb.
No, sir, you can stay there. Thank you.
No.
Yeah, right? And stop stealing the flowers. People are buying those for their family.
That's rude.
Come on, dude.
They're not for you, bro.
Dick move.
What are you doing? Thought to have been murdered. Every time someone gets near the Pineed family tomb, they are told to stay away. Does this eerie activity reveal something about Alphonse's mysterious life story? Or perhaps Alphonse is just one of the hundreds, if not thousands, of ghostly Civil War soldiers or yellow fever victims wandering the cemetery?
I wonder if they even know if that's his real name.
That's a good question.
Or if they just named him because
Right.
he's seen so frequently.
Well, regardless of his name, stop stealing the frickin' flowers, bro.
Yeah. Yeah, go rest. Go do
Like,
do your
what are
thing.
you doing? A native of Virginia and a great success at Louisiana's first American governor, Claiborne was a well-known politician in the South. While he was governor, William dealt with the nefarious actions of the infamous French pirate Jean Lafitte and his band of grunts. William was well known for his utter disgust for the dirty privateer. Privateer. That's it. Even going so far as to offer a $500 reward for Lafitte's capture. In a hilarious response to the listing, Lafitte posted a $5,000 bounty for the governor's capture. That probably didn't go over too well.
Yeah, probably not.
Yeah. During his lifetime, the governor was known to be a hit with the ladies. More often than not, William could always be seen walking down the street with a fancy cane, a tall hat, a devilish grin, and a confident swagger. He continued to serve his term until 1816, when he was elected to the U.S. Senate. Less than a year later, he passed from a liver infection and was later interned in the Protestant section of the St. Louis Cemetery No.1. The cemetery's haunting beauty is both captivating and eerie. As visitors venture through the labyrinth paths, they encounter rows of ornate tombs adorned with intricate ironwork and crumbling statuary. The ancient moss-covered graves add an air of mystery as sunlight filters through the twisted branches of an ancient oak trees. While St. Louis Cemetery No.1 draws countless curious visitors, it is not without its dangers. The cemetery's historical significance and eerie ambiance have made it a target for vandals and thrill seekers. Consequently, the site has witnessed various acts of desecration and damage to the tombs, threatening the preservation of its unique heritage. Leaving the ancient gates of St. Louis Cemetery No.1, you carry with you not just memories of its haunting beauty, but the weight of centuries of history and the echoes of countless souls. The sacred ground, with its crypts and statues that seem frozen in time, holds a unique place in the heart of New Orleans, where life and death dance in an eternal waltz. The stories whispered through the cracked and weathered tombs will forever resonate, a reminder that the past never truly rests in this timeless, haunting cemetery.
Boo.
I couldn't help but read it in my voice at the very end there.
So, there are a lot of ghost stories here. I unfortunately am not going to have any EVPs to play because it's closed. You know,
Yeah.
it's like you have to. They're not just not letting ghost hunters just roam around anymore.
I wish. I friggin' wish.
I'm sure people go by it. And people do get to go in there. There are ghost tours, but they're not going in there hanging out at night and,
with a bunch of video cameras and EVP, recorders and all the equipment and stuff like that.
Maybe if you dig deep enough, you could find something, but I didn't really see too much when I looked. But these are generations of stories of people who have had interactions with different spirits at the cemetery. Mm-hmm. The most prominent, obviously, being Marie Laveau, because not only has she said to have been attacking people, but apparently she ventures out of the cemetery, like the story we heard last week of her going into the store. But there's a lot. Now, let's just do this.
Okay.
Is it real?
So I want to get into this because we don't really have much outside of the stories, right?
Right.
There's not a ton of evidence. There's a literal ton of evidence from the area. Mm-hmm. But, we're talking about the cemetery.
Specifically the cemetery,
and this is not the last time we'll be talking about Louisiana. We'll wrap this up, because this is kind of like the Marie Laveau connection. But when it comes to the cemetery, what are your feelings on it being haunted, knowing the stories, but not really having any evidence?
I absolutely 100% think this place is haunted. It is incredibly old. It has so much history, good, bad, and everything in between. And I think almost all cemeteries, they hold just so much emotion, from people visiting to those who have passed. And I just absolutely 100% from me.
Okay.
So what about you?
First off, I want to say that you still ramble a lot. Uh-huh. But you make a lot more sense these days, I've noticed.
Oh, hey, thanks.
Yeah. You're not going in a circle anymore. You're actually getting to a point. I love it. Another thing is there are some people who say ambience and some people who say ambiance. And tonight, after almost a decade and a half of being together, I found out you're an ambiance. Okay, so man, with no evidence or anything, I believe that it is haunted. Yeah. This is the New Orleans Cemetery No.1. This is the cemetery that almost anywhere you live in the world, this is the one you think of. And it's not because it's just cool. It's because everybody has heard the stories of either ghosts or voodoo or something tied to this place that is haunting. If this place isn't actually haunted, I will be completely let down.
Yes.
I would expect to walk in there and have something unexplainable happen.
Or see something out of the corner of your eye or anything.
It doesn't have to be anything big, but I just feel like if you go there, you hear or see something almost every time. There's just too much.
There's way too much.
I've said this before, but, that was in the past, and we hadn't gotten to this location yet. I think out of all the locations that we've done, this one now is the one that I feel would be the most likely to be haunted. Mm-hmm. This is a bucket list place for me. I want to go here so bad. I'm sorry if any loved ones of yours have passed, but if you live in the area, can you please get me in? I would love to go in there.
That would be
I am not down
awesome.
for vandalizing or none of that stuff. I want to go in there and appreciate the people that are there, the history that's behind it.
The beauty of the arc. Oh, my gosh. Just look up pictures of this place if you've never seen it.
It's super rad.
It is.
In the most respectful
stunning.
way. But
it really is.
But that's going to mean that the St. Louis Cemetery No.1 is going to get
the big old seal of approval.
And that's that.
Yay.
That is part 2. So, from what I can tell so far, Louisiana is just haunted as far as we're concerned. Because it seems like every time we talk about it, it's
definite.
haunted.
Yeah.
So
I just feel like that Louisiana is just this magical little land of energy and
it's also a tragic land of let's not all forget of like Hurricane Katrina.
Oh my God.
And how many people died during that.
It was so sad.
And then we
went through so many hurricanes, and I couldn't even imagine going through something like that.
We're not a true crime podcast, but I do believe there is a ghost story tied to the cannibal that lived in New Orleans during Katrina. I'm going to have to look into that. But if we come back and decide to do another Louisiana, especially it's in New Orleans.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to look into it because it happened in a house that is now above a voodoo priestess home.
Oh my God, I remember what this is. At first I was like, wait, what? Oh my God.
Yeah.
Nope. I remember.
I have to look. If I can find enough on the house and stuff, I'd like to cover that because I'd like to talk about the guy who ate his girlfriend.
Let's just see how many Louisiana places we can find. I would be so happy with that.
We can't just be the Haunted Louisiana podcast.
I get that, but just like sprinkle them in every now and
we
then,
could do that. Yeah. I mean, there's
just
enough.
Like back to Louisiana
material.
This week.
Yeah, there's definitely enough material there. I'd love to find more in our area, but doesn't really seem to be a lot.
I know.
We tried.
I know we did.
But,
we did.
I guess this is where we're going to end it.
It is.
So where can they find us?
They can find us on Instagram at @forthebooze_podcast and on Facebook at @forthebooze.
You can also find us on X at @forthebooze. You can find us on YouTube at @forthebooze. And I actually was able to change it to just For the Booze. So
yay.
Hopefully when you look that up, you just see us now.
Good.
And don't forget, hook us up on Patreon. We're going to try and make this podcast go in a new direction. Like, we're going to do the same thing, but we want to take it farther, and your donations would really help us out.
Absolutely.
We've had so many plans for so long, and we've never really pulled the trigger until now. But if you can't, that's fine. You're always going to be Booze Crew, and we're going to love you, and the show will still be here for you.
That's right. And if you are unable to do that, you can always rate and review.
Yeah,
and that helps us out as well.
Time.
You can leave a comment. Tell us what your favorite color is. Doesn't matter what you say, and just give us those 5 stars.
Yeah, 5. It's 6 if you can. But if you also have a listener story, or a suggestion of somewhere that you would like to hear us do, reach out. Or even if you just if you want to talk to us, and I want to give a special listener a shout out, Travis.
Hey, Travis.
Travis has become quite a good little friend of the show, and we appreciate having him as a listener. And
absolutely. And thanks for the invite to that YouTube Live. We enjoyed being there with you.
That was a ton of fun. So if you're out there, Travis, we just know we appreciate you, man.
We do.
So forthebooze12@gmail.com with your listener suggestions and all that stuff. And listener stories. We haven't had one in a long time.
I know.
Kind of miss them, but
yes,
I get it. Some people don't want to share. Maybe some people are too scared to share. Yeah, I'm calling you out.
Okay.
But I guess this is going to be where we're going to be ending it this week. So we can work on a new one.
It is. So thank you, everybody, so much for listening. And we will see you in the next one.
That's right. Bye. God, I hope nobody surfs my coffin out of the city.